Okay, congratulations to Eternals. You now have a competitor for the most visually and aesthetically pleasing nothing movie of the decade. Quite frankly, I'm displeased to have to be doing this because this movie does not in the least bit deserve any further consideration or thought after its end, but here we are all the same. Zack Snyder and Netflix, as well as anyone involved in this movie, need to be put in a small room with minimal light and sound for the next 6 months to ponder what made them greenlight this poor caricature of Dune and Star Wars ideas that were displayed in this movie. I called it a nothing movie earlier, and that is exactly what it was. It looked like something was happening and nothing was also happening at the same time. The characters lacked the most important aspect of any movie, which is believability. Not for 1 second was I convinced about the severity or the reality of the story being told on screen. A movie this big failed to have any standout moments, had patchy and leaky dialogue that sounded like the characters were reading their lines from a prompter. Did the person who wrote the screenplay think they were writing a comic? You listen to the dialogue and conversation and it's missing emotion, urgency and intention. The words sounded like what I would see on a comic storyboard. Monotonous short lines that were written to fit into a small bubble allocated for words. It's a miracle I was even able to complete this movie, because for any other movie with such half-baked dialogue, I would have discarded it halfway through. For the SnyderCult Snyderverse clamor that we got with Justice League, it was partly deserved because Joss Whedon managed to make DC's premier first team look like a band of costume amateurs. So the SnyderCult might have helped save or restore their dignity, but it still had the same problems I encountered in 300, another Zack Snyder IP. The excessive use of slow motion turned the movie that was supposed to be intense and brutal into a long drawn bore fest. I need to know where this need or desire to render action and fight scenes in slow motion every 2 seconds came from. What is the rationale behind turning an exciting fight scene into a barrage of time pausing that adds nothing except to take away the intensity of the situation at hand? We saw this in 300. We also saw this in Zack Snyder's Justice League. What inspired him to turn these moments into paste? Is there some fetish for these scenes that we do not know about, or do they think the fans appreciate the dumbing down of these moments so they can cheer and clap in cinemas? Because there is no reason why action scenes, which are supposed to be sped up to promote the intensity and visceral nature of the situation, are turned into cardboard cuts in the hopes that they will excite cinema goers. Rebel Moon fight scenes had needless barrages of slow motion that did nothing except bore me to death. The fighting patterns were not even that innovative or creative to require slowing down the motion just so we could see someone roll on the floor or pick up another gun. They did not have one scene in the entire movie that required them to do all that. If anyone has seen Carter, it had Ju-Won as the lead actor. Now the fight scenes and camera angles in that movie were so damn creative that I wouldn't have begrudged them some slow motion scenes, but I cannot remember a scene off the top of my head where slow motion was used in Carter. So Zack Snyder will have to render answers as to why he thought for some reason these basic fight scenes required all that adjustment. I mean, take a look at this. How can anyone enjoy the supposed action movie when every single action scene is bastardized by this? As to the characters, there was not enough backstory or development to justify what they were doing. The movie missed several clicks in building up these characters that for someone without any prior knowledge of the movie production or storylines which were talked about doing press runs and all that, you are going to see a lot of things going on but no concrete justifiable reason for them. Tarak, for example, had no justifiable backstory for his enslavement and death to Hickson. There was no logic explained why he was the only one who could speak to, break and ride the Bennu, and no history of where the Bennu came from or whatnot. Frankly, he did not even need convincing to join the quest to go save some bloody farm, and that was just mismanagement at the highest level. The manner and circumstances in which they recruited each of their allies again lacked any development or sufficiently provided motivation as to why they joined so easily. These actors were not helped at all by the script, the producers or the director. A movie that can somehow manage to make Charlie Hunnam move and look as wooden and possible is not to be trusted. General Noble was played by Ed Skrein, and that might have been the most egregious misuse of acting skills I have seen in recent times. Ed Skrein was quite easily my standout character from this movie, and even at that, they managed to make him look as lost as every other character in this movie. A man who relishes playing villain roles, casted as a villain in a dystopian movie where he can bend the rules of law as he sees fit, should be cash money, but for some reason he loses the aura of evil he has perfected over his career simply because the director has no clue as to what he's trying to produce. In the scene where Nemesis fights the bug-like woman, the design for the bug was obviously on point, but lacking the extra bit of grime and bloodiness that would have taken it through the roof. It looked like the character design was an unfinished job done halfway through. If you are going to design an evil, vengeful, bug-like monster who kills and eats children, the least you can do is make it as nasty as possible. It was a great base design, but lacking the edge required for a scene of this caliber. This was a hilariously bad mashup of Star Wars and Dune, poorly written and even more poorly directed. All the planets and worlds looked blandly similar with the same settings of an ever-present dust, dark and devoid of variety. The only saving grace of this movie might have been the visuals. For whatever they did not put into production, they put into character design and setting. So I'll give them credit for that, because the views and the visuals had no faults I could readily complain about. Aside that, this looked like a money laundering scheme with a plot written on vibes and absolutely nothing else. Everything about the production, release and rollout of this movie seemed like a big bag of air being inflated to the limits, building up expectation and interest for moviegoers and Zack Snyder fans to see the movie. The very day the movie was released, there was an announcement of a separate director's cut, which was the first glaring red flag. How do you promote a movie by announcing that there was a separate version of it with the director's intended vision unreleased to the public? What did they hope to achieve by this? Why then would anyone waste their time to see this first movie if it wasn't complete? They literally ensured that moviegoers went into this movie with a prejudiced mind, since this was not the final cut of the movie. The second red flag was releasing the movie for streaming as early as this. Movies generally like to milk the cinema run as far as possible, even going as far as extending cinema runs, as we saw with Avengers Infinity Wars, to generate as much money as possible. For this movie, a standalone movie, not a series, to be released for streaming barely a week after cinema release, just let me know this was about to be several packs of ass. Studios are not stupid. If this movie was so good and the reception was so great, there is no how Netflix will release it for streaming this early. These two factors were already enough reason to prepare myself against whatever I saw upon watching this movie, and it did not disappoint my already lowered expectations. From what I've seen, there is nothing that the director's cut could add to make this story more palatable. The bare bones and skeletons of the story has already been established, so adding some more deleted scenes or slides will not move this movie higher in anyone's rankings. And watching slow motion being used aggressively in the year 2023, and all they can say is promise a Snyder cut. Believe me when I say this, a Snyder cut does nothing for this movie rather than give them an excuse to release this half-baked product for a second time for Snyder fans to lap it up. With all the technology and improvements available, this movie could not coordinate a competent fight scene that could look like it was produced and directed in 2023. The needless and repulsive and repetitive new use of slow motion did not do nothing except dumb down already average fight scenes, thus diminishing the movie even further. A lazy attempt at a Dune Star Wars mashup by the man who directed Watchmen in 2009 might be one of the biggest falls from grace for a director, and I for one can say I saw this coming. The final fight scenes might have been one of the most egregious misuse of camera time in the year 2023. Atelier and co see that they are being attacked by foreign forces, and what they do is stand around waiting as if they are hoping for some cue from the director to finally move and do something. In the end, they end up getting captured by the robot soldiers in the box, and at this point, I'm just logged out of the movie. This capped off one of the most disappointing movies for the year 2023. This is still the Bootleg God on the Bootleg Corner. Put your thoughts and opinions in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe and keep it locked in.